let's start with your legal victory here. You won the appeal against Feliks, the Wikipedia editor, who has been doing a very thorough job of trying to slant a lot of entries related to you call it Transatlantifa, but basically the pro-NATO, pro-Israel point of view. And he's been cutting a swath through the German Wikipedia for years. How long has he been active, by the way?
2005. So he's really pretty much from the beginning. Wikipedia before that was kind of a children's encyclopedia, but it became serious exactly in that time frame. So he's there from the start. Yeah. And he had been in Israel. He took his vacation. He's a state employee, and he took his vacation to go to Israel during the Lebanon war, and served there he was there for 6 to 8 weeks with some colleagues mentioned that, and they were astonished that he would use his vacation and longer than a vacation to help Israel in the war. That's what we've been told, yeah. And that would also fit with his Sahel volunteering that he did. He was 2 times as a volunteer in the Israeli forces in the Sahel unit, which is officially that some people come to Israel to help them with logistical and basically things behind the war scene. So they free Israeli soldiers to fight. They do stuff that somebody else could do, yeah. And he was there 2 times, yeah, as a conscientious objector in Germany, by the way, which is a little bit weird. Yeah. We still had draft at that time. For example, I had been in the Navy, so you were drafted in Germany into the military, but you had the chance to say, and a ton of people used that, really. It was, you really could make a choice if you wanted to go or not. And usually then you had to do something else, and which he did, but you had to argue that you were not willing to shoot, yeah, that you're not willing to use a gun on a person, then you could do something else. That was basically the effect of that law at that time. Yeah,
yeah, very, very interesting that he must have suddenly lost his conscientious status. I don't know. That seems to be a dead giveaway. But at any rate, you exposed this editor.
He definitely
you and Marcus.
Because he became an officer in the German army also, but now as a Jewish soldier.
Oh.
He is a member of the Jewish soldiers of the German army, and then he volunteered for becoming an officer in the German army. So that's quite a shift in the. Yeah, and we're not sure that if you had a university degree, then you could go sideways, and I think this is what he did. But I don't know exactly what if he does it or not. But in the last court case that we got the papers, it was again mentioned that he's an officer. Yeah, so I think he still is. Yeah.
So. And you exposed him on with Marcus on Wikihausen, your series of research into German Wikipedia, and he obviously didn't take too kindly to that. So if you could talk a little bit about the case and how it started, and just what you did.
Marcus made kind of a documentary, which is not really a film, but it's more like a research with pictures, I would call that. Yeah. And that was very thorough. From the investigative part, it was very good. From the film part, not really, but the investigative part was a milestone in Germany, where he looked for people who were hyperactive in Wikipedia, and there were several ones. He was able to de-anonymize via a good research, a detective's work, I would say. One lady who was very high up in Wikipedia, and then one of the most hyperactive persons. And then we met, and he asked me to join in. I'm originally investigative journalist and documentary filmer, so we joined because I really thought he did great work in doing this investigative part. And then we tried to find out who Feliks is. We noticed him because he was each of the articles that we were looking at, he was there somewhere as an editor. He was doing, and it was always really, I would call that ugly. He was smearing people. He would rewrite parts of the articles about persons so they would seem, the term anti-Semitic is always there, yeah, or anti-Zionist. And then we noticed that he has quite a lot of entries that deal with the current Israeli security policy or the wars and the military. And we noticed also that he was going after several people from the left party in Germany, especially those who are critical towards Israel. It's kind of a mixed situation. Some people are in the German left party are very pro-Israel, that they are called anti-Germans. That's not a term that I coined. It's a term that they coined themselves, which means that basically the idea is it's kind of a Marxist view that instead of the big, how do you call that in English? The difference between the working class and the people who own the production means, the capitalists, yeah, that is called the main difference in German, as it said. And they made out of that, they said the main difference is not that, but it's we have to look at the Holocaust, and that is the main difference now. So every Marxist has to be sure that he's in favor of the state of Israel, which is a safe haven for all the Jews. And because the United States is the protector of Israel, basically it looks like the foreign policy of George W. Bush, all the neocons, but they say they're Marxist. Yeah, that's very weird. Yeah? It's very hard to explain some. Yeah, and but it's really, I think it's a good method to have a Trojan horse, which you lead into the leftist movement, because now the neocons have somebody who is vivid left-wing persons who say that they are arguing from the Marxist side, and they attack you, for example, me then for being right-winged, just because I don't like wars at all. Yeah, I mean, I had been a soldier when I was young, but that shifted a little when I grew older, my attitudes toward that. Yeah, and so it's really weird. If you're a peacenik in Germany, these people will attack you for being right-wing because you're a peacenik. And they will also attack you for being anti-Semitic if you say something about the foreign policy of Netanyahu, which is awful. I don't think there has to be a lot of discussion about that. But everything is switched to that, so he was part of that. And then via a long and very tedious, it was really hard work, I can tell you, to find out who he was. Basically, we found in archive.org, we found an old entry that he had where there was a birth date and his first name. And from that, I made the conclusion that we should go via the schools. We know where he lived. And if you have the birth date, then you can have the range when he was in a school class, and he was at a gymnasium there, which a high school. Yeah, we call that gymnasium. That's very different from what you call a gymnasium. So we were able to track him down with a first name and that. And then from there, we had a candidate, so to speak, who he could be. And it turned out it was correct, because we were able to find more and more evidence towards that this person was active. And then we found out he's a member of the left party. So he's one of these anti-Germans in the left party, and he smeared his own party colleagues according to his faction side. So whenever there was somebody, for example, there were two ladies who went with the Mavi Marmara to the Turkish ship to Palestine, and were there when it was a cruel attack from the Israelis. I mean, they even shot an American citizen. You probably know that, Turkish descendants. Yeah. So these two were there. They were smeared by him for being part of that. Mission to provide goods to the Palestinians in dire need, medical stuff and kinds like that. So he was, on the one hand, he was working there, and then it was also clear that because we found on another archived entry, we found this connection to Sahel and some others. And then when we had the name, It's possible in Germany to go, you're allowed to find out where somebody lives. It's mostly in case if he owes you money or so, yeah. So you can go to everybody needs a certification where he lives in Germany. So I went to the official status of the city and filed a request to get that, and I got it. And I also noticed then that he changed his name. And he had become a Jew in 2013, probably by a marriage with a Jewish lady. Yeah, which is, we're 100% sure that this marriage is a marriage of probably to become a Jew, but it is not. It's not a relationship between these two persons. Yeah, it is something that is that's legal. But this goes into the private life. We know a ton about that, but I don't want to talk about that. That's not necessary. The point is that he uses his Wikipedia entry, found that, and then everything fit together. What he does basically, he tried to become a member of parliament in Germany. For the federal parliament in 1994, that had no chance at all. Yeah, but so you see, he was a member of the left party, tried to become a member of the federal parliament. So he is a politician, but he was not successful as a politician, and he was also not very well regarded by his fellow people there. I spoke to a lot of them afterwards who contacted me because they couldn't believe that it was him smearing them. I mean, he was all over Wikipedia and bringing them down, basically, telling they're idiots, they're anti-Semites, they're conspiracy theorists, they're favorites of Russia, and so on. All of that, the usual, whatever you hear there. So. We had that published then, and when we said, we made kind of a little bit of a joke out of it. So in two of our shows, which are about half an hour, we said in this number 10 we will give his name, and then because I studied law, that's one of the things I studied, and I'm quite proficient in media law in Germany. So I said I don't see a problem there because he's actively fighting. In terms of opinion, yeah, he tries to. He was not successful as a politician, so he switched to doing politics in Wikipedia. I mean, he switched. It's the people outside think it's an encyclopedia. What he did is it's a propaganda tool for him. So he was, by hiding behind the outer spectacle of an encyclopedia, was able to have much more effect than ever before. Because what he wrote was allegedly the truth, the condensation of truth, the concise picture of something. That's what you want from an encyclopedia. And I think this is what people need to understand, that Wikipedia has been, I think, hijacked, you could say that, and that there's an enormous political slant in there, which is, in Germany, it's pro-NATO, anti-Russian, pro-Israel. You can say that, these three things. So it's foreign policy of the empire, I would call that. That's why that's what we thought what's coming out there. And it's and because they are anonymous, they can do these things. If you were a scientist and you would deliver a paper, then you would have to say if you have connections or if there are relations which could taint your judgment of what you do. But in his case, where it's only tainted, there's nothing fair about it. He's not. So he sued us a week before we published number 10 of Wikihausen. We got a letter from his lawyer saying, you don't do that or else, and we decided to publish it anyhow. And I said, Markus, that from everything I know, I would say this is a fair game, what we're doing. The new part is Wikipedia, because what is Wikipedia? Is it a kind of a social medium? Is it kind of it's a mix. It's very difficult to explain, but Wikipedia is definitely a political tool also. So I think what applies here in Germany is the rule for the media, or for the TV stations rather, because in several of the verdicts of our constitutional court, they decided that there should never be a monopoly in a media system, neither private nor public TV, for example. So it would have to be constructed in a way that the different views of the population should be able to be seen there. In theory, it's very well. In practical, it doesn't work too good. But the theoretical, the legal side is quite clear. So I said Wikipedia is a monopoly, and it's a huge monopoly, the 5th most clicked website in the world. And it dominates the discourse, because if you go into something, you want to look up something, a person, then the first thing you get is Wikipedia, and people read it. And we had one example, which was a member of parliament of the left-wing party in Germany who wrote a musical. He's one of the top producers, music producers in Germany. Yeah. So really a big shot. He's also the head of the entrepreneurs in the parliament, but being a member of the left party. But he's in music. Yeah. So he wrote a musical about the McCarthy era. That is very close to what we are talking about. And then in 3 instances, he had a contract with the theater, and they were ready to have the first staging of the musical. And then the theater got calls from people and saying, look whom you're dealing with, go to Wikipedia and read his entry. And then they drew back because they were told that there would be public pressure, that they would be supporting a conspiracy theorist and an anti-Semite, this member of parliament. Yeah. And he couldn't believe it. 3 times it happened that they even paid fines, like 10,000 euros, so they wouldn't have to go to the contract. So this it's real. There's an effect. It's not only words. It's for a lot of people, it means that you have problems to go somewhere and deliver a lecture. For example, I went several times. I'm kind of quite often now asked to give lectures, either Wikipedia, but on other stuff too. And then when I'm there, then I got a leaflet which described me as a lifelong anti-Semite, and I'm not very much into this issue. I mean, my mainstay for the last 15 years was documentaries about the Cold War intelligence operations, and that's. By the way, also aired in the United States, National Geographic and Discovery Channel and so on. So it was quite, I've never been into the topic. I did one documentary about the history of the Israeli nuclear program, because that's intertwined with Germany very much. A lot of people don't know that, but we paid for the Israeli nuclear program, Germany. Yeah. 2 billion marks in the 60s, in the early 60s. So I had this documentary. But other than that, but now I was depicted as being right-wing and an anti-Semite, whereas in the TV station, I always had problems because I was too left-wing. And so it was really weird. Yeah, that's the same with this member of parliament who has been a anti-fascist for all his life. I mean, he even had fistfights when he was a young guy. Yeah, and we couldn't believe suddenly you're smeared by these people as something that never anybody smeared you before. I mean, we all had trouble because we were called left-wingers or all kinds of something with communists on top of it. But this time it turned around. So this is something that happened to a lot of people. And I have to say, just recently, I had been in Prague on a conference, and I gave a 12-minute lecture on the case of Feliks and what we have seen there, the court trials and so on. And afterwards, there was a flock of professors and journalists and heads of NGOs standing around me, who all suddenly noticed that it was not what they thought before, that they were the only ones smeared in Wikipedia, but they're only part of a larger group. They suddenly noticed there were people from France, from Italy, from Norway, from Czechoslovakia, and then they suddenly noticed, and that's why I think what we have to notice, that it's international. And so in this case,
it's international, and it's also, I mean, Sorry. I was it's international, and it's also Wikipedia makes a big point of saying that, oh, you can't edit if you have a conflict of interest. And then you have people like this who are some of the most productive, of course, meaning they edit a lot, but it's not productive in the sense that it produces anything desirable. However, he's the equivalent of this guy, Philip Cross, who English language listeners will be familiar with, who also has a massive conflict of interest, who also is permitted to just run roughshod over the rules and edit all these people with whom he's had confrontations online, with whom he has personal relationships. And like Feliks, who has interacted with these people in real life and who they are known to him, this should be completely against Wikipedia's rules, and yet they're allowed to do it anyway. And every time someone brings them before the discipline boards and whatnot, they just they somehow are just allowed to keep getting away with it. So it's organized and it's coming from the top, and it's happening with full knowledge of Wikipedia management and ownership. And so this idea that because some people have tried to defend like the Wikipedia from the allegations of being in league with a Philip Cross or a Feliks by saying, oh, they can't do anything about it. They don't have control over the content. Well, they do, and they let it happen. So this is like
exactly
the reason that people
that is the right expression. Yeah, exactly. And, I mean, I fully agree with that. But to cut that story a little bit short, we were sued. Then we had a verdict from the court that we are not allowed to publish 10 points. That was the identity of Feliks and some other things that we told about him that we had researched. He went to a court in Germany, which is very well known for being protective for individuals against the media. So anybody who has a quarrel with media goes to Hamburg, to that court, where they have something like 450 cases a year. For example, Berlin, it's only about 50. So everybody can have a choice to which court you go. So he won there, and by a fine of 216,000 euros, that's approximately the same in dollars, we were not allowed to de-anonymize him. That stood for about 3 or 4 months. And we had to take everything down from the internet. And then was the first court case, which we won in 8 out of 9 points. So, but the rule that the court gave was very much individual on each of the cases. But Feliks went back and said he went into, what do you call that? So the same thing again. Yeah, he went
appeal.
Yeah, he appealed. He appealed in full. And everything, and we wondered because the decision was quite clear of the court, so they retracted, which we have been told has not happened before in Hamburg, that they retracted a verdict that they have given preliminary completely back. Yeah, so it was only 1 point left at that time, where I said that because I couldn't find any photo of a guy who was a politician and tried to become a member of parliament, and is in all kinds, was high up in the left-wing party, no photo at all in the internet. So I said, I only know this from people in intelligence services who get, they are asked to delete everything that could be found of them in terms of pictures and so on the internet. I once had an interview with the head of military intelligence in Great Britain, who I could talk to, but I couldn't show a picture, not even a photo of him. And he said, he explained to me how that is handled. So I said, this is the only instance where I know, everybody, whoever it is, you will find a photo of somebody on the internet. You have to be very, after that, you have to make it your hobby to get everything out of the internet. So I said that, and that was forbidden at that time. Now it's still. Then the appeal went to court. And it's very expensive. I mean, he has to pay something like $35,000 now for this court cases. And he declared himself, he always called himself, even in the court case, the poor Jew. I'm a poor Jew, and these people are after me. And they try to, they only are, his line of defense was always, they're only after me because I'm a Jew. And first he became a Jew in 2013, and then we didn't know that he was a Jew. So it was not our, we were after him because of what he did there. And then we found out all these things. But his line of defense was that, even from his lawyer, but that didn't go through in the court, fortunately. So he lost the second case. But that is interesting because he retracted. There's 1 point left now, which is different, which we still are not allowed to talk about. It's about a photo, and he swore an oath that we have been told that there is a photo of him. I cannot talk about the details now because that's forbidden by the court case. But we had somebody, so we had a sworn testimony of a member of the board, highest board of the Left Party in Bavaria, who said he's seen this photo himself of him in uniform, basically. And then we were, then he gave now a sworn testimony that this photo does not exist. That the sworn testimony of the guy who was a member of the board of directors, so to speak, of the Left Party, is wrong. And the court said, okay, this is one sworn testimony against the other. So because the point is we have to prove, we are not allowed to talk about this. But meanwhile, we have two other people who've seen that photo, and we're working hard. It has been published in a very a newspaper, a magazine from the Left Party. At that time, they weren't very big in Bavaria, only a few hundred copies, but we might be able to obtain the photo in print even, yeah, which will be interesting because then it's a perjury, I think you call that in English, yeah.
Yes.
And that because he's a state employee, that could mean a lot of trouble for him. I mean, real trouble. He probably will lose his job for that. But but we have to prove it. We are on our way to proving it. I don't know when you want to publish that, but it would be better if it's not immediately, because we have to go to archives to do that. But so he completely lost the case, but he retracted all the things. And that is important. So from the 9 points that were there, 8 points he lost. And he retracted the accusation, the appeal for that, because otherwise there would have been a court case now written in Germany, which said what the judges said in this court case. They said the rules of Wikipedia do not apply in German law. There is no right to anonymity. If you are part of a struggle of opinions, no matter where it is, you have no right to anonymity. So that was very important, because this is a thing that will have the media law history in Germany, because now for the first time in a court case, it's clear that the sacred anonymity of the of the people writing in Wikipedia. I mean, the official reason is that there will be trouble for them if the names are known. Yeah, but how in Germany? I mean, we're not a banana republic. Yeah? What they do, they need the anonymity to smear the people, so that you don't see who they are, that they have vested interest and so on. Yeah, but they always hide behind this picture of we are North Korea, and what you will go to a gulag if your name is known. Yeah, so but the court said no. The court in the verdict, they said, you know, we would have thought differently, or we would have started to think maybe about it if you were editing algebra. And then they did de-anonymize you. But if you're a part of a political fight, and you are, yeah, they said that it's clear from what he does there. He's using Wikipedia for the political fight. There is no right to anonymity. Had he stayed with his appeal, then this would be German law in writing now. And then he retracted that appeal. So now it's only in what we heard in the court case, and we can talk about it, we can write it, but it's not there in writing. But of course, this is important, and we think it didn't change anything about his verdict. So he has to pay the same amount of money. It's no the only positive part was for Wikipedia. And we were thinking, who paid his court case for 35,000 euros? And I think we'll have an official request to Wikipedia if they helped him with his court case. But because the decision to pull back the appeal in all the instances he's lost, and especially this one, is in the interest of Wikipedia, not of him. So I think that also, it should be known internationally. And I don't know, for example, I'm not proficient with how the American law is in this. But it's interesting because the argumentation, that was my argumentation in the beginning, if you recall what I said, that if you're part of the fight for opinions, that's what it's called in German law, then you have a right to do so. But you have the idea of anonymity and being in a monopoly and then anonymous, that is ridiculous. It's the exact opposite of what it should be. Yeah. And of what it should be in legal norms. in Germany, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, and especially because Wikipedia tries to pretend that it's all about, oh, freedom of speech and democracy and every little guy can get his name out there. But of course, if you have people who are working for the state or working for intelligence services who are being exempted from the rules for reasons that are not made clear to the rest of the editors, then of course, yeah, people are willing to accept that its version of truth is reality, and you have people losing their jobs or losing their theatrical performance contracts or losing their book publishing contracts because Wikipedia, the voice of God, says that they are an anti-Semite or a fascist or whatever the insult du jour may be. And I think it'd be very interesting to find out who is paying his legal costs because, as you said, this benefits Wikipedia far more than it does him. And setting a legal precedent like this increases the likelihood that a legal precedent will eventually be set in another country, like the US, for example. I know a couple of people who have legal cases in progress against Wikipedia, and it will be very interesting to see if they look to any of these German court decisions, because it wasn't just you. There was another case a few years ago where Wikipedia was legally compelled to remove part of a Wikipedia article that libeled a professor.
Yes.
So German law is quite a bit further ahead with this than American law, and it's anybody's guess whether it's just Wikipedia. The American court system is too far in the pocket of the American political system to want to do anything about it, but there is a lot of pressure being exerted by the victims of Wikipedia slanders. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes.
I would be happy to help anybody approaching us with the information, with the court cases, and I think also the lawyer who's a specialist for media law that we have would also be interested to do that, because what we found out, and that is because we read your articles on your blog, is that it's exactly the same, and it's as I said in this conference in Prague, it's the same in France, it's the same in Italy. So it's Wikipedia is a kind of an international organization, yeah. It's and people don't notice that. Even the victims don't notice that. They always think somebody smears me, but they don't see that it's organized. Yeah. And then, of course, it's quite clear if you have something of this magnitude, of this monopoly, of this power, that if you were in an intelligence service and your job would be to give the state version of the information to the public, then you would be an idiot if you would not use that. Yeah. But on the other hand, if we call ourselves a democracy, then we have to stop this monopoly doing this worldwide. Yeah, and it's really, I think it's very interesting to see who's behind that. What we see is that it's a fixed group. Meanwhile, Wikipedia is exploding in terms of the amount of money you can earn there. That's another thing. So there's also an interest from some of the editors we at least saw on Germany. That's an exponential curve, the amount of money taken in by Wikipedia and also spent by Wikipedia. So, and we noticed that several of the people that we were investigating, and we haven't de-anonymized everybody. We were quite sure that in this case, it's legal, yeah, that it would be okay because this was over the top what he was doing, yeah. But we had other people where we said, maybe not this in the first instance, but a lot of them have this connection, yeah. They have a connection to the state. It's a political agenda. It's not, they hide behind the encyclopedia to have this political agenda. And then to me, it smells very much, especially, for example, in my case now, I'm under attack in Germany, even by the TV station that I work for, as being, for example, they say I like to be interviewed by RT. I've been interviewed by RT, I think 3 times on issues of intelligence where I'm an expert. And it's what is it I like to be interviewed? They asked for an interview and I said, okay. But now, and there are several other people. For example, there's a specialist for Syria, a German journalist who is really one of the best we have with the deepest knowledge, who lived there for a long time. And so it's all in connection now, I would say, with this empire and the global geostrategic position connected to Russia. Whenever you, for example, I spoke out several times and said, from my knowledge, from the things I've done, that I said I've investigated a large array of very ugly stories where the West was using its intelligence for for operations. One of the most important is this submarines in the 80s, which toppled Olof Palme and made it possible that there were people inside the security apparatus who wanted to kill Palme, and he was killed. Yeah, and for 30 years, it's only now with this new investigation in Sweden that's ongoing that for the first time, you have to imagine that after 33 years, they look who had an interest to kill Palme. Before that, nobody was investigating. They were only looking for a single assassin, so the thing would be over. But of course, Palme, I mean, he single-handedly financed together with some parts of the Soviet Union, the ANC of Nelson Mandela, which was at that time a communist terrorist organization. And he was demonstrating together with the ambassador of North Vietnam in Stockholm in 1968 against the Vietnam War, when the students did that. But in Sweden, it was the government who was demonstrating against it. And he compared it to Treblinka and Majdanek, the bombing in North Vietnam, which did not go down well. Richard Nixon called him only that Swedish asshole, quote. Yeah. So that is... that's one of the things. And he was in favor of, when he went, for example, Nicaragua or when he went to Cuba, he was always greeted. He was kind of, and Sweden supported that. It was the major country of the non-aligned countries. So it was together with Yugoslavia. There was a very strong relation with Tito and Palme because they were both. Palme suggested to get out of the bloc. So he was an enemy of the empire. And in my last film, the documentary that I'd done for ZDF, I had the Deputy Secretary of State of the United States and asked him if Palme was a problem. And his answer was, oh, yes, yeah. And then he was talking about this close proximity to Russia. So the big thing is Russia. And I think this is why they try to, you have to imagine the people who were telling that wrote the text, was the editor-in-chief for this part of the documentary where I was depicted as being a stooge of RT, is a person who I worked with for 20 years. He knows me very well. So he knows I'm a journalist, and I was depicted as an activist for Russia in that film, not as a journalist. And the lecture that I gave where they filmed me was about 89, about the turnover, and I'd interviewed quite a lot of very important persons in Germany and Europe, like Egon Bahr, that was the head of the Palme Commission, one of the architects of détente in Europe. And I've spoken to Horst Teltschik, who was the Minister for the Chancellery. That is the man behind everything in foreign politics. And I'd spoken to the interviewed the man responsible for the security policies of Olof Palme. I've spoken to the Soviet ambassador at that time. So I was laying out what I heard in these interviews, and I spoke to the special assistant of the CIA chief, Bill Casey, who was very, he just died, Herb Meyer. It's a very weird interview that I had there. So I was laying that out, and then they said, they just took one quote and they said, NATO is making money on wars, which I think if you look at the budgets, you can see.
That's the whole point.
It's
they don't
$716 billion.
They don't have the threat of war. They don't. They don't have the threat of war. They don't have anything.
I said that, for example, you look at the figures, and then you have $716 billion. Let's say over 700, depending on where you look at. If you go to CIPRI, if you go to the American numbers, but it's more than 700 billion. If you go to Russia, then you see they spend 55, and the United States spends about $80 billion for its intelligence, 16 intelligence services alone. Yeah. So, and Germany is now supposed to pay 2% of the gross national income for military. Then we would spend more. Germany alone would spend more than Russia for its military. So it's completely weird, yeah. And then this is part of I see the strategic struggle, which is China and Russia, rather China and then Russia is one. But the enmity against Russia, and you know that in the United States very well, it's so easily you just have to push a button, and it seems that the Cold War is there again. It's as if Gorbachev never happened, and if all this betrayal that has been done by the West, where they said they won't move NATO 1 centimeter to the east, yeah, and Gorbachev heard that, and I know people who know Gorbachev, yeah, and I mean, for them it's betrayal. They simply trusted the word. In their kind of diplomatic sphere, it was you trusted the word of a head of state. Yeah, you didn't need it in writing. If it was somebody told it to you, that's the method that was there even in the Cold War. And now it's like we like with Iran writing contracts, and then next day you say, yeah, but we don't. We only obey to contracts which are not binding us, only to the other side. Something like
that was the last guy. That was the last guy. We don't have to honor what the last guy said. I mean, it's the whole point of a democratic government is you're supposed to have some continuity based on things that are written down, legal contracts, laws, treaties, things like that. But we don't really have that anymore. And it's interesting that you mentioned Russia as the focus, because if you look at Wikipedia and who these super editors, these editors who are above the rules, are going after, there's a huge contingent of very strongly anti-Russian editors, not even just the Felikses or the Philip Crosses, but there's another one who are mostly based out of Poland and various former Soviet socialist republics, Latvia, Estonia, Finland. I think there's a few in Finland even, not that that's part of the USSR, but that general area. These editors who can edit constantly, never seem to have to take a break, and who will viciously attack you if you're pro-Russian, or viciously attack you even if you try to change their articles from being anti-Russian. They get to put their bias in these things and just make everything is so virulently anti-Russian. You had Jimmy Wales himself, the co-founder of Wikipedia, even get up in front of a conference in Yalta in 2014 and tell Ukrainian editors to their faces that we need to provide an alternative to the Russian viewpoint. So he's basically telling them to get up there and slant the entries in Russian Wikipedia against Russia so that they can have an alternative, because, we don't want anything to. So when I see something like Russia wants to build their own version of Wikipedia because they don't trust the regular one, and of course they would be foolish to trust the regular one. The regular one is so anti-Russian that, like I said, they'll let you, if you're on there and you're a super editor and you're anti-Russian, you can do whatever you like. Forget the rules; those apply to other people.
Yeah, it's by the way, that's one of the point there are three YouTube shows that I'm in, and in one I always say, it's a little bit weird because I'm quite an old man now, and it's a long time ago. I'm not talking about political things in terms of rules. There's in law, there's pacta sunt servanda. That's an old Roman rule that you keep what the contracts. It's impossible to have any kind of diplomacy if whenever there's a new government, the old contracts are not valid anymore. That is as killing people from an embassy. You don't do that because you're friendly, but if you do that, then the whole system breaks together and it will be against you. You look at that, and for me it's very weird because it's also Julian Assange is another issue, that if you have if you are allowed to torture somebody who exposes war crimes, and if you're allowed to send him to jail, then what kind of law is there left? If law is not the protection of the weak against the powerful, then you don't need any law. If the law is only the codex of the power doing whatever it pleases, then the whole idea of law is already, and this is not political. You see what I mean? You don't have to be a leftist. You can be a conservative and still have to say, not this way. And I know people who are that. And I had professors at the university who would go berserk over Wikipedia about this construction because it's completely anti-democratic. But in a way, it's not important anymore. And I think this is what needs to be fight. We need to fight that, because it's not a question if you're a liberal, if you're a conservative. These are the basics of democracy, how they function, if we take it seriously. But I think I can see from the reality that there are a lot of people around who don't want that. They want a well-run fascist state, which where power is applied with ease. Yeah, and why have all this quarrel and why have all this discussions and so on? Yeah, they look for a well-oiled machinery of power that can project power everywhere in the world. There are 149 countries where the the United States has special forces applied, but they only have 100 diplomatic relationships with 144 countries. So you see where the focus is, yeah. So
Yep.
these things, it's and then you are told that Russia, which has been, put in a cage and poked with a stick, and I know what I'm talking about because Putin was in Germany and delivered a speech to the German Parliament in 2008, I think it was, where he still offered and said, "Look, let's work together. Let's have from Lisbon to Vladivostok a common market." And we can all. I mean, it was the last offer, so to speak. Hey, why don't we get reasonable and just work together? We live on the same continent, and we don't want to be enemies with anybody. And then you again, I mean, it's. I think you have to be an idiot to not notice what was going on there. And he was all the time. They were put under pressure, and then. Even if you look at the current things, if you look at the Ukraine, like the Crimea, which is the mainstay of the Russian fleet in the Black Sea, and then you have the last harbor in the Mediterranean, which is Latakia in Syria, and then they do as if it's. I mean, you have to be a complete idiot without any kind of geopolitical military knowledge to not see what is going on. Yeah, and then this is called, when I talk about this, and it's just my training from university, from the military and so on. And then they call me that I'm an activist for Russia. I'm just an activist for not being a complete idiot. I just want, it's not that I'm it's extremely left-wing or so, and I know it shouldn't be interesting. Yeah, it should be interesting if what I say is reasonable, and if what I say is true, and if I present facts or anything like that. So I think this is a political struggle, and we have to understand that it's not going in a good direction, and Wikipedia is part of that, and it needs to be corrected by everybody who thinks that democracy is more than a well-run fascist machinery of a state.
Very well said. Very well said. Wikipedia, I call it the modern Ministry of Truth, but it's basically providing cover for this transformation of what was a fundamentally democratic system into one that is anything but. And so I wish you much luck on your future research, and I think we should all try to get other people involved from various other languages, Wikipedias, so that they can do what we've been doing, because I've been digging into English Wikipedia. You've got German Wikipedia, but we would like to hear from people.
And there's one more thing in Germany which is important. We have kind of a Wikipedia on steroids, which is called Psiram. For example, my entry when we started to work in Wikipedia, I had a okay entry in Wikipedia because of all the films I'd done, and it was really pretty much okay. I once changed it because to correct some of the things which were not, but that was minor things like script and editing and being the director and so on, where was what. Yeah, so I corrected that. But then when I started to work about Wikipedia, I was smeared in Wikipedia as being a complete nutcase and idiot. Yeah, and then we published that, and I said, look, this is what happens to you if you publish about Wikipedia. So this tells you that it's a private revenge operation. And this is not an encyclopedia. This is not what it should be. And that had an effect that they took it out of Wikipedia. So my entry in Wikipedia was becoming quite okay again. But then there's another website, Psiram, and that is in connection. In Germany, it's completely illegal, but it's accepted. And they even work together with NGOs which are state funded. So Psiram is a website which is only there to defame people or organizations they don't like. And this is again going into this connection with Russia or with the United States foreign policy and Israel foreign policy. And that is really, really bad. I mean, it's full of lies, and you can't do anything about it because the servers are in Bulgaria, the company is in Iceland, and you cannot go by law against it. And that is supported by an NGO, which allegedly is against racism in Germany, which is run by a former Stasi informant, where they call IM, which is a person who full-time works for the Stasi as a, what do you call that? He's sneaking on the surroundings.
Yeah, basically a snitch.
I mean, and that is now, she just changed her the colors on her arm. Now, before that, she was East Germany, and now she's United States. Yeah, but she's doing the same things. The same things exactly. What she did was defaming people in GDR, so declaring them enemies of the class, and they should be destroyed. And they should be destroyed in public, so they have no credibility. And then system change, and now she's doing the same. So, but the fact that this is possible in Germany, that there's support from our government from this, tells you something about the state over what we're talking about. This is why I say everybody who is interested in democracy should take note of this, because if you can just switch from GDR, Stasi, this kind of operations, into West Germany now doing this again, if you are pro-NATO, the only thing is, if you are pro-NATO, you can do everything. You can break any kind of law. You can just work outside of any sphere. But if you're criticizing it, then you will be immediately attacked by exactly these organizations that they set up to do this. So we're really Orwellian. It's an Orwellian state that we're approaching. And I think NATO is one of the big things that we have to watch, in terms of, not that the people from NATO are doing this, but it's the structure. It's a structure of hegemonial power above other nations, and for example, the European nations. And anybody who's, and I think this is not a question if you are American or not. It's a question if you are kind of a democratic consciousness in the United States, if you have democratic consciousness in Germany, in Italy, and then they use all these countries like Ukraine, and as you said, the Baltic states, the Poland. Poland is kind of the aircraft carrier of the Americans in Europe now. Yeah, once it was West Germany, but that has retracted, and it's now Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and Poland. These are and of course Ukraine. Yeah, which is, and I know I'm quite connected with the Ukraine from several people, and it's a very poor country, and it's very badly run country, which is corrupt, very corrupt, and the people thought, become part of the European Union, become part of the West, and we'll get some more money, we'll have a better life. And nothing like that happened. They have a war in there now. Yeah. So a lot of people are very disappointed by that. It was the quest for a better life. It's like somebody from Poland or from Soviet Union went to United States to have a better life, yeah, to have the American way of life. So that's what the Ukrainians want. But the whole system is in a way also falling apart. Yeah, if you look at France, for example, I don't know how much you hear that, but it's all the time. And you have Chile, which is another. It's not, of course, not NATO, but it's connected. You know that Brazil was supposed to become a member of NATO. North Atlantic Treaty Organization, a country from the South Atlantic, was supposed to be there. So they don't care for anything. It's just projection of power. Huh? Okay, but I'm repeating myself.
Yeah, and then just one thing is that what you mentioned, that it's falling apart, which is why Wikipedia is so important, because they get to say on Wikipedia, oh, it's not falling apart. Why would anyone ever think it's falling apart? If you can't do the real thing in real life, then you just have the story that you've done the thing, and history is written by the victors, and at least for now, these people are passing themselves off as the victors, and they're writing history and hoping that they can write their way into actually having control of all the things they say they have control of. They don't have to give people a good standard of life. They can just write that they've given people a good standard of life, and that everybody in France is happy, and that everybody in the US is rich. And it's really a corrupt and disgusting and pretty evil structure. But I think we've pretty much said what needs to be said here, unless you have any last comments.
No, it's okay. I think we should, as I said, we should cooperate, and I tried to do this. I did this in Prague, so we need to have this in Spain, Spanish Wikipedia, and French Wikipedia. These are huge, and I think it's also we are all in Europe, at least, we are very separated. We have national media systems. So we don't know how Italy is run, for example, in terms of media. It's even Denmark. I've been in Denmark, and we don't know very much about it. It's like fiefdoms. And although we have international organizations, we don't know about this. For example, I didn't know that the things they try now in Germany to put Wikipedia together with the TV stations to have a ministry of truth, that had been done in Israel already.
In Israel,
I got that from you. So there's a lot that we have to learn. We have to become much smarter and work together and unite against this weird force which is trying to manipulate us into this is not Athens, this is not the Agora where you had 15 philosophers each saying something different and then everybody could listen to it, and this is how the Western world became great once it was once great, but what it's now, it's the opposite of that you have 15 philosophers and 14 are taken away and putting into Belmarsh prison, and one is there and he gets Wikipedia as his radio loudspeaker system. No good.
Yep, this is a Ministry of Truth, George Orwell. It's all in there, basically what this is. But all right. Okay. So you can see your site is at wikihausen.de, wikihausen, helenofdestroy.com. That's self-explanatory. And come talk to us if you have anything to say about your country's Wikipedia, or you have tips or information or anything else. Thank you.